Wingtip Vortex Avoidance on parallel runways. There are two things in aviation that should scare you: mid-air collisions and wingtip vortices. Fortunately, the concept of see and avoid keeps you free from changing paint with another airplane. Staying away from wingtip vortices, however, well, that requires a different strategy, one called visualize and avoid. Wingtip vortices are serious business because should you encounter one, it's entirely possible that you'll lose control of your airplane or even lose the structural integrity of the airplane. Now, vortices are simply bad juju, and you must know how to visualize them and avoid them. Unfortunately, I see way too many pilots who seem unaware of the dangers these rotating coils of air pose to their airplanes. Many pilots know that when landing behind a large aircraft, you're supposed to fly above that aircraft's glide path and touch down beyond its touchdown point. What's not clear to many folks is that you want to apply the same avoidance strategy when taking off or landing on parallel runways less than 2,500 feet apart. Why? Because wingtip vortices can travel sideways, presenting a hazard to airplanes operating on the parallel runway separated by less than 2,500 feet. For instance, I fly out of John Wayne Airport in Southern California, KSNA, where smaller general aviation airplanes typically operate on runway 20 left and larger commercial airplanes operate on runway 20 right. These runways are separated by less than 500 feet, making vortex avoidance critical for any airplane landing on the left runway. In February of 2024, a Boeing 757 landed on 20 right during a 3-knot crosswind from 240 degrees. 49 seconds later, a light sport airplane at 450 feet from the runway threshold of 20 left, at 40 feet above the ground, essentially the same altitude as the jet's previous flight path, encountered the 757's wingtip vortices and crashed. You heard that right. The crash occurred a little less than a minute after the jet touched down. As you can see, the smaller airplane was rendered uncontrollable as it encountered the vortex from the larger jet aircraft. Fortunately, the young instructor and student survived the accident. Here's the takeaway from this video. When landing behind any aircraft posing a wingtip vortex hazard, you should land beyond its touchdown point, even if you're landing on a parallel runway, such as what exists at John Wayne. You should do this irrespective of what the wind conditions are at the airport. Of course, even a small right crosswind, which is common to John Wayne Airport, can carry those vortices onto the smaller runway. Landing beyond the jet's touchdown point on the right runway means landing at a point a little beyond the first third of the 2,900-foot left runway. And you should have more than enough room to stop on the remaining runway, but doing a touch and go might be challenging for some pilots, which is why a full stop landing in this instance might be the best idea. Suppose you didn't see the jet's touchdown point on the right runway, despite the fact that the controller probably alerted you to use caution for wake turbulence from a jet approaching that runway. Well, the instrument approach glide slope and the poppy glide path guide large airplanes to touch down near the fixed distance markers, and those are the two large white blocks located 1,000 feet from the runway threshold on instrument runways. So plan on touching down beyond those blocks on the parallel runway. But you must also ensure that while approaching the parallel runway, you remain above the jet's glide path. When you can see the jet approaching the runway, this is easy to do. If not, then you can estimate its glide path by looking at the VASI on the parallel runway. Most jet aircraft will approach at a 3 to 3.5 degree glide path, which is 2 to 3 white bars on the left side of the poppy, the precision approach path indicator, which can often be seen while approaching the parallel runway on the left. My advice to you would be to fly high enough to ensure that you don't descend into the path the landing jet previously flew. At John Wayne, that might mean flying a steeper approach to the desired touchdown point. If you see 2 white and 2 red poppy bars on the right runway while approaching the parallel runway, you are, most likely, not flying above the larger airplane's glide path. Now let's be clear here. Parallel runways within 2,500 feet of each other should be treated as if you're landing on the runway used by the larger airplane. Landing beyond the larger airplane's touchdown point might require airspeed control and landing skills that you might not have. If so, go around and return for landing at the appropriate time. When taking off on a parallel runway, you should also use the same wake turbulence avoidance procedures used when departing directly behind a larger aircraft. And that means rotating before the point where the jet rotated and not flying below the jet's climb path. At John Wayne Airport, this means making at least a 15-degree left turn at the end of 20 left. Sometimes you might need more than 15 degrees, especially if a right crosswind exists at the time. Keep in mind that the wind above the ground is typically much stronger than surface winds. As a final note, if you're on final for runway 20 left and a large airplane approaching the right runway elects to go around, you need to avoid the larger airplane's descending vortices. And this means making an immediate left turn away from the runway centerline. Now, if you continue your approach, it's entirely possible that you'll encounter the larger airplane's descending vortices, turning left at least 15 degrees before beginning the go-around. Then notifying the controller that you want to start a climbing left crosswind turn. As soon as it's safe to do so, of course, that's the proper procedure. Said another way, turn the way you need to turn first, then talk to the controller later. Period. In other words, aviate, navigate, and communicate in that order. I've seen a small airplane on a half-mile final for runway 20 left with a Boeing 737 approaching the right runway, going around adjacent to him. Now, the controller didn't warn the small airplane about the go-around, resulting in the small airplane encountering the descending vortices. The small airplane literally rolled perpendicular, or nearly so, before recovering to land on the left runway. Watching that airplane encounter that vortex made me feel as if, well, I was one gurney away from being clinically dead, if you know what I mean. So pay attention to the potential for wingtip vortices. Do what's necessary to avoid them. And, above and beyond, treat all runways less than 2,500 feet apart as if they are the same runway for the purposes of wake turbulence avoidance. If you want to pass your IFR knowledge exam or your private pilot knowledge exam, then check out my 50-hour and or 40-hour Instrument Pilot E-Ground School or Private Pilot E-Ground School, respectively. Not only will you pass the exam, but you'll learn more about the essentials of IFR or VFR flying that you just won't get in other ground training programs. Why? Well, because I've been instructing for over 5 decades, have personally written and illustrated 7 aviation books, 5 of which are aviation textbooks, delivered training programs in all 50 states and many European countries, and have won countless awards from the FAA for my aviation training programs. In short, you won't be taught by a private pilot with limited experience and a basic ground instructor rating. Instead, you'll receive quality ground training that makes it easy and fun to learn. So visit rodmachado.com and check out the large selection of aviation educational courses.